Thanks for joining us on Business Matters. People planning to fly over the next few months should pack a suitcase full of patience. The summer travel season kicks off Memorial Day weekend, and the Federal Aviation Administration is forecasting a record number of passengers over the holiday period. Industry experts say several issues, including infrastructure problems and low staffing, will likely result in delays and overall complications. The FAA and the Department of Transportation say they are addressing the matter head-on, but it's expected a complete overhaul of the nation's air traffic control system will likely take a few years to complete. For those taking to the skies this summer, experts advise taking direct flights if possible to avoid the possibility of missing a connection. Taking a morning flight and avoiding weekend travel are also better bets for less disruption. And Chinese solar energy companies could be excluded from previous tax benefits if the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill becomes law. The act was passed by the House of Representatives early Thursday. China solar importers are asking the Senate to change course in their version of the bill. President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act provided tax write-offs to clean energy producers and manufacturers. Since China is the world's #1 solar manufacturer, its companies benefited, and the U.S. saw increased Chinese solar power investment. Once President Trump signs the act into law, China will no longer qualify for what has amounted to a double subsidy. Tax breaks from the United States, plus Beijing granted subsidies and other benefits back home. Last year, Horizon Advisory warned that the U.S. clean energy sector faces big risks by allowing Chinese energy investment. It said if Chinese state-backed players exploit U.S. policy, the U.S. could lose energy independence and the security and economic development that come with it. And President Donald Trump is giving Apple an ultimatum. In a social media post, Trump said the software and consumer electronics giant must make its iPhones in the U.S. or get hit with a 25% tariff. Last week, Trump said he was unhappy with Apple CEO Tim Cook's announcement that his company plans to make the phones at recently built plants in India. A Trump administration official said Cook and Trump met at the White House earlier this week. The topic of their conversation was not divulged. Apple has not commented on Trump's demand. And the FCC is cutting off communication with so-called bad labs in China. The agency has issued new rules that block certain labs from testing any more U.S. electronics.
The Federal Communications Commission is sending a clear message about America's telecommunications. All electronics used in the U.S. must go through the FCC's equipment authorization process before they can be imported. The agency explained that the majority of electronics are tested in labs in China. The FCC found that many current labs have potential deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party. As a result, the FCC has adopted new rules to block and remove such labs and other actors deemed untrustworthy from the equipment authorization process. Any Chinese labs that pose a national security risk will no longer be allowed to test electronics set for the U.S. The products include smartphones, computers, baby monitors, fitness trackers, and more. In recent years, the agency has banned companies on its covered list from having their devices approved for use in the U.S. Now the rules ensure the labs that run tests are not connected to bad actors.
OpenAI and NVIDIA will join other companies to build Stargate infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates. The Artificial Intelligence Infrastructure Cluster is a sister project to the recently unveiled push to expand AI infrastructure in the United States. In January, the CEOs of OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle announced plans to create a new company called Stargate. On Thursday, those three companies, as well as NVIDIA, Cisco, and G42, announced their partnership to build Stargate UAE in Abu Dhabi. The project's first part, a 200-megawatt AI cluster, is expected to go live in 2026. And Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said today that he spoke with President Trump on the phone. He says the two sides agreed to hold a productive discussion in an upcoming tariff talk.
で、私どもとして Japan's goal to lift the tariff measures has not changed. However, if I may repeat myself, it is investment over tariffs. In what ways Japan can invest to create more jobs in the US? There is no change in our plan to pursue cooperation between Japan and the United States toward creating more labor in the United States.
The U.S. is charging a 25% tariff on auto imports, a mainstay of Japan's trade with the U.S. Trump has relaxed some of those tariffs, but has kept in place tariffs on steel and aluminum. Today's talks lasted about 45 minutes and covered a range of topics. Some items addressed included security cooperation between the two allies and Trump's recent visit to the Middle East. The Japanese leader said both sides agreed to hold talks when they attend the Group of Seven summit in Canada next month. And China's communist regime said today that it would continue talks with the U.S. government to stabilize the bilateral relationship. This comes as both sides work to resolve trade disputes. According to Beijing, its vice foreign minister spoke by phone yesterday with Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau. China says the two sides discussed key issues. The State Department has acknowledged the call and said both countries agreed to keep communication open. The call follows an agreement reached on May 12th in Switzerland to pause new trade measures and reduce tariffs for 90 days. The U.S. lowered its tariff rate on Chinese goods from 145% to 30%. China dropped its tariffs on American imports from 125% to 10%. And President Trump is threatening to slap a 50% tariff on goods from the European Union. In a social media post this morning, the president said it's because trade negotiations with the EU are not progressing. Trump called out what he described as trade barriers, unjustified lawsuits against U.S. companies, and more that have led to a massive trade deficit. The president said he is recommending the 50% tariff go into effect on June 1st. There was no immediate response from the European Commission. Back in April, a 20% reciprocal tariff that was in place for a brief time was paused to allow for negotiations. That pause is set to expire on July 9th. And Disney is calling foul on YouTube's new global head of media and sports. The Walt Disney Company has filed a lawsuit to stop the appointment of Justin Connolly, alleging a breach of contract. After more than 2 decades at ESPN and Disney, Connolly left his role as head of platform distribution earlier this week. Disney claims that Alphabet's YouTube is aware of Connolly's employment agreement, which requires Connolly to work for Disney through at least March 1st, 2027. YouTube and Disney are competing right now for sports viewership. ESPN is gearing up to launch its sports streaming platform, while YouTube has been aggressively chasing live sports, which includes a $14 billion NFL streaming deal. And the Senate voted yesterday to block California's plan to phase out the sale of gas-powered vehicles. Lawmakers overturned waivers from the Biden administration that allowed California to set its own vehicle pollution controls and to ban sales of new gasoline cars by 2035. But Republicans say the plan would hurt the U.S. economy and would have a nationwide impact because other states follow California's emission rules. California Governor Gavin Newsom and the state's attorney general say the vote was unlawful and they plan on challenging it in court. And the world's largest event on hydrogen technology and projects took place this week in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. The summit showcased cutting-edge innovations shaping the future of clean energy. The event also signaled growing momentum in hydrogen fuel technology, underscoring its potential to transform the energy and transport sectors. Here are the details.
More than 700 exhibitors from 30 countries have gathered in Rotterdam, widely considered as Europe's hydrogen hub, bringing together over 15,000 energy professionals.
The reason why we put this event on is basically to provide a platform for the industry to come together from every corner of the world to try and drive forward and accelerate the hydrogen economy.
At Hyundai's booth, the company showcased a vision of hydrogen-powered cities. Many car manufacturers also presented their hydrogen vehicles, like BMW with its hydrogen fuel cell pilot fleet. This car is developed with Toyota's fuel cells, capable of reaching speeds over 112 miles per hour. Ford showcased its hydrogen-powered racing cars, saying that hydrogen can compete with gas on the track.
Our aim is really to show the potential of hydrogen, to show that it works, to show that it can compete against petrol cars. That you can do the same thing with hydrogen as you can do the same with petrol cars. So that's our main goal as well.
But how does a hydrogen fuel car work? To put it simply, first, hydrogen tanks store compressed hydrogen. Then fuel cell stack combines hydrogen and oxygen to generate electricity. Then electric motor drives the wheels. And water vapor is expelled as the only byproduct. Compared to the current electric vehicles, hydrogen power cars can refuel in minutes, perform better in cold weather, and avoid the mining impact of battery materials like lithium and cobalt. According to the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Energy Association, by 2050, renewable hydrogen is projected to supply approximately 14% of the United States demand, which envisions hydrogen playing a significant role across various sectors. However, the current main challenge is how to make it more affordable and scalable.
If a government can either regulate to encourage the use of hydrogen or subsidize to try and bridge that financial gap in the short term, or do both, ideally, then that will accelerate the industry even further. And that is what's being discussed everywhere this week.
With innovations accelerating and global attention rising, hydrogen has the potential to move from demonstration booths to daily life. Masih Aryani, NTD News.
A price discrimination case against PepsiCo has fizzled out. The FTC dropped a lawsuit accusing the soft drink maker of price discrimination that favored Walmart. The federal agency claimed that Pepsi's practices drove up prices by putting other retailers at a disadvantage. The case was filed in the final days of the Biden administration. In a press release, the FTC called the move rushed and described it as a partisan stunt. It added that the staff should not be sent to court to fight a losing battle. Pepsi said the company has always and will continue to provide all customers with fair, competitive, and non-discriminatory pricing, discounts, and promotional value. Lipton is spilling the tea on its new look. The company said the design bridges heritage and modernity, and in a package still features Lipton's signature red badge and yellow background, but the Lipton logo is now in all caps. The company's founding year has also been added. The tea tags got a makeover too. They now feature a letter L on one side and the type of tea on the other. This is Lipton's most significant brand transformation in over a decade. And Big Lots is making an even bigger comeback after recently opening dozens of stores this month. The discount retail chain announced more than 70 additional stores will open on June 5th. Big Lots said the openings are in 9 states and all in the eastern and Midwest U.S. And they will be located in Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Big Lots filed for bankruptcy last year and closed dozens of stores. Variety wholesalers acquired many of the chain's stores in December. And U.S. stocks fell today. The S&P 500, NASDAQ, and Dow all ended the day and week lower, with tech and growth stocks like Apple, Amazon, NVIDIA, and Meta declining. Treasury yields had dipped and the market volatility rose. Trump's tariff stance rattled investors and contributed to economic uncertainty, also impacting companies like Deckers and Nike. And that's all for today's Business Matters.